Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to do a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. If you have your own song you'd like to submit for special selection, you can find a link to do so in the description below. Today's suggestion comes at us from Zachary. Abomasum by Toska. Rabia Masad is one of my favorite guitarists, and I think this song is a great exhibit of his writing style. So let's get into it. The band is called Toska, and the track is Abomasum. Let's see what they're bringing to the table today. Alright, so we're in 3/4. Very subtle, very subdued, very tom heavy in the drums. Getting some harmonics in there. Give it this nice atmosphere. Ooh, that chord shift. Yeah, beautiful idea having the bass lead these chord changes. Yeah, I think the idea of the person levitating really fits with this. It's a very light, especially having all this space present in these riffs. Ooh. Alright, so they're still in 3. This whole time they've been in 3, but they really push against it a bit. That last section was written in 7 and then a 5, which of course is 12. It's still 4 bars of 3. I like how they've opened up the tone a little bit. Ooh, that cymbal run. Yeah, drummers starting to open up with wider cymbal sounds, chinas. They're allowing some of these notes to reverberate a little bit more, not muting as much of it. Yep, shifted the distortion on. Yeah, real interesting. The drummer's emphasizing every other beat at times with 1, 3, 2, 1. Taking the same idea but giving it an edge with this constant rising idea. The bass has gotten crunchier. I'm really enjoying this. That is a fat bass tone. My jeez. We shift into a 5/8 real quick. I think it's 2 bars of 5 and then we shift off back to 3. Although if it's 5533, like I'm guessing, that's 16, which means we might be shifting over to 4/4. That would be interesting. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That fat bass tone, man. Really interesting what the drummer was doing right there, too. Ooh, halftime in it. Still in 3. I'm curious. Maybe we never shifted to a 5. What's really interesting is how much of this new stuff is still heavily based on that riff we started the track on. A lot of it is these tiny variations on the idea. Took the same idea. Ooh, boy! Yeah, we took the same notes, but we shifted it away from that 3-note idea into something that would fit in the 4/4. I love that cymbal work. Really interesting is that the drummer has continued to accent the beat before beat 1, whereas previously it was 1, 3, and then 2. Now we're looking at 1, and then 4, and then 1 again. All right. All right. So this is really an interesting track. I didn't know it was going to be instrumental. Which is always a surprise to me. I don't know why. I feel like a lot of the stuff we do has lyrics to it. I don't know if that's coincidental or not. I think Instrumental Week was the most compact time that we've ever had a string of songs without lyrics to them. It just, a lot of people really like songs with words. Um, and, but here's the thing though. I think the song works well for what it is, but it is missing oomph. And I don't know if that's, I mean, obviously that's subjective, right? This may be a perfect song to somebody else. I don't think it needs lyrics. I think a lot of people kind of get that mixed up when I say that some instrumental tracks are missing something. I'm not saying that this song needs lyrics, but it does feel like purely atmospheric music that occasionally doesn't really do much and feels like it fits best as background music or soundtrack music or something like that, where it's missing that element that says, listen to me, I deserve the spotlight. And of course, it's going to be different for different people, right? Some people love listening to soundtrack works as they are, right? They just really enjoy that sort of non attention grabbing music. But that's kind of where I'm fitting this song into as far as my own listening tastes, is that there's a lot of really cool things in here and I will be diving into them. There's some really neat stuff going on in here and I absolutely love a lot of what tools are being utilized to craft this song. But I am missing that attention grabbing element. It could be lyrics, right? It could be a vocal track, but it doesn't have to be. It could be a lead guitar, it could be a violin, it could be a piano, it could be a trumpet. I really don't care what the instrument is. It's the song is lacking that hook. And personally, I think it would be really interesting to hear this with a lead element over top. Even better would be if somebody made a lead element. Maybe they added another guitar. Actually, no, that doesn't. I mean, they could, but I think that would be overkill. Maybe they added a violin or a piano line or something, or a vocal track, and traded off with the other guitar. I mean, it would take a lot more work than to just pop this track into a DAW and then record something over it. But I do think it would be really nice if this had another line that occasionally sat above the song, sometimes sat within it, and took the place for the bass and allowed the bass a moment to be the lead instrument. Something along those lines. It wouldn't work in every section. I think some of these sections do really work as they are. They are attention grabbing while being atmospheric. But there are a few sections in here that I feel are just lacking that extra bit of musicality to really pull me in beyond background music, soundtrack music. So those are just my opening ideas, though. I don't want to talk any more about that in particular until we get to. I do want to touch on some of the sections that I think worked as atmospheric and as a strong musical component, and we'll probably touch back on this topic of background music. But for the most part, I'm done with that. I just kind of wanted to get it out of the way because that is how I felt about most of this track, is that it's just really well put together, but it's missing something. And honestly, one last thing, that something doesn't even have to be musical. This would work very well in a multimedia project where that other element is a visual component. That's something I don't think we really talk about too much, and I honestly tend to forget. But music, I tend to appreciate and approach for music's sake, where it is the sole aspect of the art. But music also works very well in multimedia. Um, and sometimes music works better when there is a music video for it. There's been a couple of songs that I thought are really difficult to divorce from the video itself. They're just so tied together that the video might as well be part of the artwork. To watch the video without the music or listen to the music without the video is missing the larger picture. Um, and yeah, I think that this could be in that vein, uh, where that extra oomph doesn't necessarily need to be another instrument or a lead line or anything like that. It could quite literally just be a visual component to go with it. Um, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Like I said, I'm going to touch on some other stuff lightly coming back to this topic, but there's some stuff adjacent to it I want to approach. Before we get there, though, I want to talk about the core music that's going on here because this is really interesting. a lot of the song exists within 3/4. We dance around it a little bit. There's that 5/8 section, which might honestly be a 4/4 section, if I'm being generous, or sorry, if I'm counting it correctly. But other than that, a lot of the song takes place in 3/4 or 4/4, there at the end, and it all is based on the same idea. And I think this is the fascinating part, because I think most of us would agree that the song is varied in a sense. That a majority of the song sounds similar, even if you're not musically inclined. You don't know why it all sounds similar, but you kind of get a vibe that every piece of the song sounds connected, even though some of it feels very different. That 4/4 section is a huge sweeping change to the 3/4 section we start in, to that 5/8 section, to the 3/8 calm element that comes before that heavier 4/4 concept. But it all feels cohesive, and maybe you don't know why. And I'll tell you why. It's because the whole song is based on one idea. And it's really neat how they went about doing this. If you look at the notes that are chosen in our opening idea, those long notes the bass is holding, the notes that the guitarist is holding, some of the notes in the runs, because I think we start out with just a couple of like 3 notes, and that third note just gets held out and allows to, it's natural reverb on it. But eventually we reach a point where the guitar is moving constantly, just hitting these 3 notes, one every beat, if I remember correctly. And you listen to all these notes though, and you take note, pun intended, you take note of what dyads are being created between the bass and the guitar. For those new around here, dyads are just a 2-note chord. That's it. Die is 2, add, I don't know, music. I honestly don't know where the add part comes in. But like a triad is going to be a chord consisting of 3 notes. So a dyad is a chord of 2 notes, which is our bass and our guitar. They occasionally do play, the guitar doesn't occasionally play guitar, or does occasionally play chords, but for many of these sections, we are getting chords in run form, where we have 1 note at a time rather than playing the entire chord stacked on top of each other simultaneously. So when you listen to these dyads, and you take note of them and you start marking them down and seeing what kind of progressions and musical ideas we hear between these 2 notes for all of the sections in the song, you will see a pattern. You will see the same ideas popping up over and over and over with different rhythmic ideas, or different pitch ideas, or different speeds, or with extra beats or with less beats. One of the really interesting things they did with the 4/4 is they had to accommodate an extra beat. We used to have 3, and we could have this dun 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 dun, this rising note idea. Those are the wrong notes. I can't sing. Don't don't hit me on that in the comments. The guitar is playing 3 notes, usually rising and changing through the chord progression. So we'll have a different set of 3 notes when the chord changes. Whatever. We have that idea. Well, what happens if we go to 4/4? Well, now we have an extra beat. What are we going to do with that extra beat? Well, let's not do this rising idea. Do we have anything in the song that allows us to hold notes out? Oh yeah, our opening idea from 6 minutes ago. Let's go revisit that. Let's copy paste it in here. Well, we got an extra beat. What are we going to do there? Just keep holding the note out. Maybe we'll change to the next note a beat earlier than we expected. And they really just continue to take these ideas, alter them rhythmically, and then when they reach different time signatures, they just take what they have, the closest that they can fit to their new time signature, and modify it in a way that works while retaining that core DNA. It is really neat how many times they were able to take this same chord concept and, I don't even know the word, revisit it, reimagine it. That's the word. Reimagine it in different time signatures, in different rhythms, occasionally with different chordal ideas, but not usually. There were a couple of spicy chords I heard throughout, and there were a couple of sections that changed up the chord progression slightly, but for the most part, the overall atmosphere and progression itself, the overall flow of emotions that came out of our chord progression were overwhelmingly similar. What did change, though, if all the music was the same, why does everything sound different? Is texture. And I think this was really fascinating to listen to. I commented a lot on it in the first few minutes as they were moving from one concept and flowing into the evolution of this. When the song started, it was a lot of reverb, held out notes, and then we moved to muted notes. And then they slowly released those mutes and they allowed these notes to reverberate a little bit more. And then the guitar took on a little bit more of an edge. I don't know, it wasn't full on distortion, but it had more of that rock bite to it. It wasn't a clean guitar anymore. And then the bass ended up getting a little bit of distortion. I don't know if that was a volume boost. I don't know if it was a drive pedal. Something gave it a little bit more bite. For all I know, just started plucking the strings harder. The drums went from their very muted stuff with ghost notes on the snare to more full-bodied hits instead of these little wrist movements, getting the arm movement, getting more attack, more intensity on the strikes, shifting from more subtle, subdued cymbals like a closed hi-hat to the ride, to the crash, to the china, so that we would get more extravagant cymbal sounds out of it. Began to open up with including the tom in it and adding some of the tom strikes in it to make it more dynamic. The guitar then adds in their overdrive, really kicks it up. And it was really awesome to hear this one idea. No rhythmic changes, right? No rhythmic changes. No musical changes at all for as far as I'm concerned. Granted, I've only heard the song once, and this is the first 3 minutes of an 8-minute song. So I could be misremembering stuff as we are now, 15 minutes away from that moment. But for what I remember, I don't really think the guitarists were changing what they were playing much at all. It was a lot of it was the sound, the tone, the effects. The drummer did open up. The drummer had to change what instruments they were playing, but for the most part, they didn't change the notes or the rhythm itself. It was about including more instruments into the same patterns. And in that opening 3.5 minutes, they drastically changed the vibe of the song, the emotion, the atmosphere of it all without changing the music, what was on the paper. Technically, I mean, we did move from muted notes to held out notes. That would be documented on paper. And technically, some of the effects are volume. So, volume dynamics would be noted on paper, but the notes themselves are not different. That's what I'm trying to get at here. And they kind of laid down the purpose of this track in the opening 3 minutes. They said, hey, this whole song is one idea. We're going to do variations on it. We're going to explore it in different ways. But here's our thesis. Listen to how we don't change the music, but we change the atmosphere. We change the vibe. We change the feeling of it all. And then from there, they started to get sneaky. Well, what if we do change some of the musical components? What if we keep our foundation? What if we keep our chord progression? What if we change our chord progression just a teensy weensy bit, but we keep our rhythmic idea from the previous section? What if we continue to expand upon this core idea, these core note relationships, and we just explore it in different rhythms, time signatures, minor chord progression changes? We change how fast we're going to play. Maybe we're going to play more notes. Maybe we're going to allow a note to be held out and take up an entire bar. Maybe we're going to put 16 notes in a bar. But when you actually break down the notes themselves, it's the same stuff. And it's just fascinating, right? This is a song that, at least to me, speaks about evolution. It speaks about how one idea can mean a lot of stuff, how it can come back and be represented in different ways, how it can almost seem like a ghost. No matter how far away you get from a concept, you haven't actually gone anywhere. It's still there. It still haunts you. Um, it's really fascinating to hear them, like I said, just take one idea and run with it. In a sense, this is a type of minimalism. They built an 8-minute song that has movement, progression, direction. It doesn't ever feel like it's static and stands still based on one idea. It's just really fat. To me, this would be an exercise, right? This is something to be like, can I do this, right? Or, maybe if I have a specific idea in mind and I just can't take it anywhere, this would be something I would do and experiment on it to just kind of get outside of my comfort zone and try to work on this one idea and turn it into something other than just a single riff idea in my folder of works in progress. Um, and they ended up turning it into a full song and releasing it on an album. Fire by the Silos, I believe, is the album. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's just, you got to give them credit for that. Like I said, I don't know if that's how they went about it. That's what it feels like to me, that this would be a writing exercise to kind of get out of my comfort zone and try something new. Much like a lot of my experimental ideas over on my composition channel, it usually started out with something like this. What if I did this? What if I did that? Just to try new concepts. Um, and this, funny enough, this is something I've done before. Can I make a song that's one idea, at least on the underlying element of it? I will say that this execution was far better than mine. But yeah, it's just really phenomenal. Um, so we have a song, and it is primarily one idea throughout. And a lot of that one idea, like I mentioned, is note relationships, right? Different rhythms, sometimes slightly different chord progressions, different guitar ideas, different drumming ideas, different bass ideas, all based on the same basic note relationships as we progress through this song. So, what is everybody's role then? Because everybody kind of sticks to one role. Our bass typically plays foundational things. You'll find that the bass typically plays half or even just a quarter of the notes that our guitarist does. In fact, in many instances, our bassist pretty much follows along with the guitar and lays down the chordal ideas, usually playing something around the root note of the chord to emphasize the movement underneath the lead element. Our drum is purely rhythmic. Some really neat ideas in there. I pointed out the few times that the drums really stuck out to me, but for the most part, laying down the time signature. Sometimes playing against it, some really interesting stuff. I want to touch into that in a bit, but rhythmic. So that leaves our guitar. What is our guitar doing? Texture. There are some melodic ideas, and in most cases, it is the instrument that is moving the most. It has the most momentum to it, but I would never say that the guitar is playing a lead melody line. It is playing something melodic at times, but nothing that I would ever put in a spotlight. And this kind of leans into that idea that I had that this is really good background music, and this is why. There is a natural evolution throughout the song that I find fascinating, but this is that oomph. The lead element, whatever needs to sit in a spotlight, isn't present, which is fine. Not every song needs it, and they only have one guitar, so they would have to double track if they were going to do that. Because honestly, if the guitarist decided to do a lead melody, which would probably feel like a solo section if it was packed in between these textural elements, we would lose that guitar texture. And that guitar texture, I think, is a lot of the atmosphere. Like I said, our bass kind of walks the chords and our drums do the rhythm. We need something to fill the space, and the bass is a fat tone. The bass has some bite to it, but it does not have enough of that width and power to fully encapsulate the sound that they're going for, that huge atmosphere that the bigger moments absolutely need. The guitarist does that. It really makes the big moments big. And without it, we would have something that would be in the spotlight. We would have a lead element, but we would be missing the oomph on the bottom instead of the top. So, yeah, this is a tricky situation here where they really do need a fourth instrument. Unless somebody were to take vocals up. And like I said, I don't necessarily think that every song needs vocals, and I would not ever ask this track or this band to add vocals to this song. So I think they did the best they could with the tools they had. And, that's kind of a weird way of putting it because obviously they made the song they wanted to. So I don't know if there were any compromises. Well, I mean, with all art, there's always compromises, but they released this in a capacity that I would assume to say is something that they wanted to release it as. But like I said, at least to my ears, it is missing that oomph, but they just didn't have a way to do that without adding vocals, and I don't know that the song needs vocals. So, like, I guess what I'm saying is, as far as instrumentals go, they did everything they could. And maybe that was within what they wanted out of it, maybe it wasn't, but I don't know that this song could have been done any differently without including different elements that might not have been as cohesive for the entire album or even what they wanted. But yeah, that's it right there. Is because of the way that they have all these instruments set up as roles. Also, just because of the sparseness of performers, three-piece band is going to have a really difficult time with layers. And if any of them do sing on other tracks, that's going to be your lead element, unless they're going to double track an instrument. So, where does that leave us? Do I have anything else I need to say? Anything else I want to talk about? Because I talked about the journey it took me on, what I feel like it means in a sense. Talked about the time signature, talked about the idea of the single concept song. I think that's it. Oh, the drumming. Yeah, so the drumming, there's something real interesting here at the drums. They were the driving force to every odd time feel. Like I said, I'm pretty sure most of the song takes place in 3/4 with an occasional detour to 5/8 and 4/4. But not all of the 3/4 sections sounded like 3/4. And it's because of the odd rhythmic components to the drums. Usually they were sitting right there in the pocket, laying down the time signature for everyone to work within. Occasionally they pushed against it though. One such case was in one of the 3/4 sections when they were accenting every other beat, which gave us an oddly weighted rhythmic component where we would have an accent on beats 1 and then 3 and then 2. So one bar had 2 accents, the next bar had 1 accent. And on the larger scale, on a macro level, it makes sense. You see it as every other beat. But when you're actually feeling these bars, it feels weird because most of us are going to understand music in smaller groupings. A lot of ideas either work within 1 or 4 bar phrases, and this sounds like every other bar is getting a different rhythmic component to it. And the interesting thing is that in a sense they kind of are, because our first bar is 2 accents. Our second bar is one accent. And sometimes it feels like he is working in a 4-bar phrase where bars 3 and 4 have very minimal accenting against those two. So that's one instance. Interestingly, though, I pointed out that we have an accent on 1 and 3, leaving the next downbeat with no accent from the drums. This idea of accenting the beat before the beat 1 of the next bar shows up again in the 4 when we get a downbeat on 1, and then 4, then 1, and then 3, and then nothing, and then 1, and then 4, and then 1, and then 3, and then 1, and then 4, and then 1, something like that, where we have this shifting uh, emphasized element where sometimes it feels like we are in 4/4 because we have this 1/3/1, so every other beat, but occasionally we'll have this pushback where instead of on the 3 we have it on the 4, which leads right into the 1, and it feels like they almost forgot to do the accent, so they're like, oh snap, I'm late and I'm just going to get the next one as well while I'm here. And it feels like a little bit of a rushing kind of vibe. And yeah, just really interesting ways that the drummer decides to play against the time signature in places. And then that 5, I'm still not even sure about that 5. I got to go back and check that. But yeah, the drumming was real nice in here. I loved some of the more subtler ideas as well. Like when the drummer was beginning to open up there in the opening 3 minutes, and we were shifting to a bigger section, and we went from very subtle closed hi-hat, snare, bass, just very simple stuff, and kind of snuck in this hi-hat roll, closed hi-hat roll, to kind of give the impression, hey, things are going to be ramping up soon. And of course they did. The drums began to open, used bigger cymbals, included more of the kit. Yeah, just fun stuff overall. And the bass tone was just sick. I think that covers everything then. Phenomenal track. Um, like I said, to me, it works really well as background music or supplemental music to something else. I would really love another component to this. It's neat as an atmospheric track, and I probably should get around sometime to just appreciating music that works within the atmosphere and doesn't ask for a lead element on it. But at this point in my life, my brain says, hey, where's the hook? The spotlight is shining and no one's there. There's a nice stage, there's nice set dressing, beautiful props, but nobody's on the stage. And that's kind of what the song feels like to me, where there's this beautiful atmosphere that's sort of amorphous and constantly changing, but nobody's doing anything with it. It's just sort of there. So it's neat, but it does feel like half of a whole kind of idea. Although half would be wrong. It's like 80% of the whole. Just needs that a little bit extra to get over the line. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Toska's Abomasum. That's where you guys come in. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you thought of this track. If there's anything that stood out to you, anything you like to agree or disagree with me on, go ahead and drop them in the comments. Above the comment section is a description box, and in there is a link for Linktree. It takes you to this menu right here. It has everything related to the channel. You can pick up some merch, join the Patreon, join Discord, follow me on Twitter, email me, just a bunch of stuff in there. You can go ahead and check it out, see what's going on. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Greatly appreciate all 3 of those. All right, that wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, as usual. We'll look at some more beautiful music, as well as checking out another special selection. Until next time, remember to be critical but not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.